So we will review 3 questions for Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. And our first question has to do with the symbolism. How does a black box function as a symbol in the lottery? Does its physical description and the villagers' attitudes toward it explain what it represents about tradition and societal behavior? Now, if we were going to go through a story here about our black box, it is going to first, well, we know our setting is a summer day, and the lottery is there's only 300 people. So that doesn't really give us anything about the box here. We see the boys gathering their stones. This will be for our foreshadowing question, because we might wonder why they're gathering stones. But I guess when we first read it, we might not have thought anything weird because, little kids do like rocks, right? So then, as we get to meet our box here, we see that the man, Mr. Summers, he devotes to the civic activities, and he arrives carrying the black wooden box, and there's a murmur of conversation amongst the villagers. Murmur does not exactly mean like excitement. It's almost like a quiet whisper. And we also see the villagers keeping their distance from the box, which is a little odd. You would think if it was a lottery that people wanted to like win, they'd be maybe rushing to get it started. So right there, we could sort of see that. And original paraphernalia had been lost long ago, and the box now resting on the stool had put into use even before Old Man Warner, the oldest man in town, was born. And they talk about how they've been wanting to make a new box, but they don't want to upset even as much tradition as was represented by the black box. So right away, you could say this is a big symbol here, that the black box represents this town's traditions. We could put that in our answer here. And the fact that it was constructed at the start of the town, we could even maybe say that, well, this tradition is definitely a very old tradition. So you could say when traditions are very, very old, the older they get, the less likely people are to question them. And here we have them talking about getting a new box, but every year the subject was allowed to fade off. So we can say that this town, the black box, we could say the black box represents the town's unquestioning dedication to tradition and inability to accept change, because they don't even want to change this box. So definitely anything about the box and the people not wanting to change its appearance, or when it says there was a story that the box had been made with some pieces of the box that preceded it, the one that had been constructed when the people first settled down to make a village here. Every year after he's talked about making the new box. So we could say the black box grew shabbier each year. By now it was no longer completely black, but splintered badly along one side to show the original wood color, and in some places faded or stained. So you could say here, we could use a quote. Although the black box, wait a minute, it said, the black box grew shabbier each year. The townspeople were reluctant to update it or get a new box. This shows the citizens were incredibly set in their ways and saw no reason to change the box or the tradition it brought along with it. Because obviously the box, if the box wasn't there, if one day people were like, we're just going to get rid of this box, we're going to destroy it, then who knows, maybe the lottery would have also ended. So anything about this black box, people's inability to question parts of their government, or because technically the black box here in this lottery is like basically a law or policy in the town. Every year they have to gather to choose someone they're going to kill. So anything about the black box representing inability to change, reluctance to question authority, reluctance to question traditions and where they come from. People aren't even doing that here. And then, so for our foreshadowing question, the story's opening scene explains how they hinted the lottery's violent outcome. That is our paragraph with the stones. So you could put something, the story opens with Bobby Martin and the other boys in the town stuffing their pockets full of stones. So you could say the story's exposition, because an exposition would be the beginning of your story, the introduction basically, before the events. You could say the story's exposition shows the younger boys in the town gathering stones. Readers may have thought that was typical behavior of young children. However, the fact that the stones are used to kill Mrs. Hutchinson foreshadows the violent resolution of the story. And resolution, that just means you're ending there. So that would be one example of foreshadowing. And if we're going to look for another, there's obviously a lot of, we could maybe say, ducked under his mother's grasping hand, his father spoke sharply, and Bobby quickly came. You could say the attitudes of the town people, where we had them, or it had said anything about these, the part about the murmur. Carrying the black box, there was a murmur of conversation among the villagers. The villagers kept their distance, leaving a space between themselves and the stool. The fact that they didn't want to help Mr. Summers when he was getting this lottery ready. You could say the general attitude of the townspeople shows that the lottery we could say that the lottery was not a typical exciting event because they were murmuring as Mr. Summers approached with the box, and they kept their distance from, you could say, from the box in general. This is showing that maybe the box wasn't something that was welcoming. They were kind of not too excited about it. Other things that could have foreshadowed, if we go back down, the names. The night before the lottery, Mr. Summers and Mr. Graves. You could definitely say that Mr. Graves, the fact that he spent 1 year in Mr. Graves' barn and another year underfoot in the post office. So the fact that Mr. Graves is the character that keeps the box over the year, definitely you could use that as some foreshadowing. Because remember that every name in a story, Shirley Jackson might be picking these on purpose. And even though summer is supposed to be a time of, spring, summer is your growth renewal time, whereas winter is your time of death. But for these townspeople, they believe that a lottery in the summer is going to make their harvest successful. So this is almost like a sacrifice kind of thing here. And performed by the lottery, a perfunctory tuneless chant that had been rattled off duly. Some people believe that the official of the lottery used to stand just so when he said or sang it. You could say a tuneless chant is a little creepy. So that definitely, you could say, maybe foreshadows something. And something sinister. Because a tuneless chant, certainly creepy. And we have Miss Hutchinson arriving. She doesn't exactly show anything that she's worried really. But this, if it's going to say, well, now, Mr. Summers said soberly, guess we better get started. Soberly, that is like a serious way to do something or say something. So that could maybe foreshadow that the winner of the lottery does not get a good prize here. Other ones, if we're looking for more, the fact that there's a sudden hush, like it doesn't appear that people are excited. We could definitely use those as foreshadowing as well. The fact that everyone's grinning at each other humorously and nervously. And I could put that here too. You could say, as the lottery begins, the townspeople are described as interacting with one another humorously and nervously, which foreshadows the lottery winner was not the lottery winner would not receive an exciting or lucrative prize. Because normally when you read a story about a lottery, you're going to think it has to involve money. And the way that the people are acting while the lottery is taking place shows that this is not something that they're going to win money. They also don't mention anything about money. Like normally if there was going to be a lottery in your town, you might hear people saying like, boy, I wish I won, or I hope I win, or if I win this lottery, I'm going to buy this. So there's no talk of monetary prizes, and there's no talk of excitement hoping that they win. That most definitely, you could say the dialogue between the characters that totally lacks excitement or anything about a prize can start to maybe hint to us that this was not a good thing to win this lottery. Any of those. And then we will also, so then our other question, nothing but trouble in that. This is most definitely foreshadowing, because we would be wondering here, why are other towns quitting their lotteries if these are good? If lotteries are a positive part of a community, then why would we're questioning why other towns are saying they're not going to do it anymore. And then you could say it's kind of ironic. Of course, old man Warner is going to be approving of the lottery because he's 76 years old and he's made it out of every one of them, right? So that definitely could make sense. This too. Well, the don't be nervous check, you could say a kid might be nervous pulling it because he would want his family to win, right? And then when we finally get that the Hutchinsons have taken their ticket, you didn't give him time enough to take any paper he wanted. I saw you. It wasn't fair. Most definitely foreshadowing at this point that the lottery winner is not a good thing. Because why would they be saying it's not fair if your family has now won the lottery? And this can definitely go into our analysis of the situational irony. So your situational irony is normally people would think winning a lottery is a good thing. But in this case, when we get to Mrs. Hutchinson saying it's not fair, so we could say Tessie Hutchinson shouted to Mr. Summers, you didn't give him time enough to take any paper he wanted. I saw you, it wasn't fair. We could say the reader, what could we say here? The reader sees the situational irony when the Hutchinson family chooses the dotted card. Mrs. Hutchinson immediately says that her husband was not given enough time, and we'll use our quote here. You didn't give enough time to take any paper he wanted. I saw you. It wasn't fair. It was not given enough time, and says, and reiterates that it wasn't fair. This shows readers that winning the lottery is not a positive experience, because if it was, Mrs. Hutchinson would have reacted with enthusiasm when her husband chose the the winning card. So that most definitely is our irony here. And the actual outcome enhances the story's critique of blind conformity. So you could say we have this story where if you win this lottery, but then you actually end up dying. And we could say that this blind conformity almost, this can also show something, because when the Hutchinson family wins or chooses a lottery, gets chosen, Mrs. Hutchinson tries to throw her daughter and her daughter's husband into the mix. And that definitely shows this blind conformity, because even though Mrs. Hutchinson she's mad that her family was chosen, and rather than try to fight this lottery in general, rather than trying to say like, this lottery is crazy, none of us need to die today, she actually tries to say, why doesn't my daughter and her husband get also put in our drawing? Because now we learn whichever family draws the ticket has to choose again. And then there's like almost a second lottery. So there's the main lottery and then the family lottery. So now the Hutchinson family, everyone in the household, is going to have to draw. My daughter draws with her husband's family. That's only fair. And I've got no other family except the kids. And so that means that Mrs. Hutchinson tried to have her daughter in this mix, meaning she wanted less of a chance for herself to get chosen. That's most definitely this blind conformity. You could say Mrs. Hutchinson tries to have her daughter and daughter's husband put into their family's drawing, which would decrease her individual chance of being stoned to death at the end. This is an example of the blind conformity, because rather than fighting the idea of the lottery in general, Mrs. Hutchinson wants her daughter or son-in-law to be subjected to the lottery's sacrifice. So that definitely shows that rather than trying to end this lottery, trying to say like, we're not going to do this anymore, like fighting to end the lottery, she's still in a way supporting it, but she's going against the rules of it, obviously, but she still shows support of the lottery. She doesn't speak out against the lottery being ridiculous or wrong. Instead, she says, why isn't my daughter in it? Which is pretty messed up. And then in the very end, we see Mrs. Hutchinson. She just tried to say here that it's not right. In her final moments, after her daughter, so even her son Davy had to pull it. I almost want to know, what would she have done if her youngest son had pulled it? Would she have went along with it then? You almost get the impression that she would have went along with it, even if one of her children was, because she tried to put her other daughter in, and her daughter's husband. So you could say that Mrs. Hutchinson technically was not ever against the lottery. Because here, it isn't right, it isn't fair, it isn't right. So to say it isn't fair, she's not exactly arguing the lottery. She's just arguing still the fact that her husband wasn't given enough time. So that definitely shows this blind conformity that Mrs. Hutchinson never spoke up against the lottery. There was only really a couple of the young people that spoke up against the lottery. The one that was talking to Old Man Warner. That character would probably be almost the only one. Wait, when he says, and they say old man, they do say Mr. Adams. They do say, Mr. Adams said to Old Man Warner, who stood next to him, that over in the North Village, they're talking of giving up the lottery. I would say Mr. Adams might have been the only person in the story that maybe wasn't this blind conformist. Because he's bringing up the fact that, hey, guys, other people don't do this. You didn't hear Mrs. Hutchinson say that. So And then Old Man Warner, we get the main reason why they do this, right? Used to be a saying, lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. So we can assume here that the reason this town still does this lottery is because they truly believe that by stoning someone in their town to death, they will have a lucrative harvest. That would be what they mean, corn be heavy soon. That has to do with your harvesting the corn in the fall. So out of all the people, I might say that only Mr. Adams brought up the fact that this lottery is unjust and unnecessary by saying that other towns aren't doing it. And if we notice, they're probably not starving. So hopefully this town will end this lottery at some point. But it was definitely too late for Mrs. Hutchinson.